All right, guys. So we're going to kick off today. We're super excited to do this. I'm Grant Deacon. I'm the CEO of Unstack. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. We're really excited about today's webinar. If you're not familiar with Unstack, just quickly on us. We exist to really help businesses create and scale their digital presence. We do that through creating great marketing software. But we also recognize that you really need the latest playbooks, tactics, and strategies in order to implement those and really grow your business faster. And so that's what these expert webinars are about. This is our third webinar. Our first one was about brand differentiation and brand positioning. Our second webinar was about getting started with Facebook ads. And today we're going to be talking about influencer marketing, and particularly how your B2B brand can really nail influencer marketing. And so each of these really builds off of the previous one. If you really like what you hear today, go back and check out those others. We're going to send this out after as well. Today we're going to be hearing from Gibran Malik, who's the director of marketing over at Grapevine. Grapevine is actually one of the world's largest influencer marketing platforms. They've literally run, I think, thousands of campaigns with all kinds of brands, from some of the largest consumer brands in the world to startups, early stage companies, and B2B, and have accrued a lot of insights over the years that we're hopefully going to hear from today. I think importantly, something that I know Gibran's going to do is really think about how to make this approachable, digestible, and kind of give you just that really easy entry point to get started. And so from that angle, we're really excited to hear from you, Gibran, and I'm excited to turn this over to you and sort of kick things off.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Grant. So super excited to speak to you guys today. My name is, as Grant said, I'm Gibran Malik. I'm the Director of Marketing over at Grapevine. And so what I'm really excited to talk to you about today is essentially simply how you can unlock the influencer marketing channel for B2B. So, as you might know, whether it's as a little bit of a preamble, as you might know, whether it's, Google PPC or Facebook, paid search has become like a pretty essential part of B2B marketing. On top of that, though, the B2B space is more saturated than ever. If you're thinking about the B2B space, just think about how many project management software is out there, or CRM software, or content marketing tools, or even influencer marketing platforms, right? And so this makes it harder than ever to stand out in a crowd. And if you are a smaller startup, then especially in a competitive industry, it's difficult to have the spending power to play around in PPC. However, one solution to kind of circumvent all of that is influencer marketing. And although you've probably seen compelling kind of B2C content, whether it be Allbirds or Purple Mattress, you can definitely use that same power to build an awesome B2B campaign for your influencer marketing campaign for your brand. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. I'm also going to turn off my video to make sure it doesn't lag. So essentially, influencer marketing for B2B matters because in lieu of the spending power you need to put behind PPC, savvy B2B marketers leverage, reviews. And I'm sure you've gotten emails from folks at like G2 Crowd to, buff out your profile on their websites because there's a lot of kind of SEO traffic there. And influencer marketing is kind of the next step to that. You're trying to convert creators into viral advocates. Unlike B2C products, you can't simply send someone to your product and have them review it, right? For a SaaS platform or software, user-generated content has to be a little bit more on the kind of educational side. This means that, from the process of campaign conception to publication, it takes a little bit longer. And my goal for this session is to give you kind of a deep dive into how you can use influencer marketing to beat your competitors in the proverbial marketplace. So before we get really started, just a little bit about some of the hosts here. Really excited to partner with Unstack on this webinar session. Unstack's all-in-one platform helps marketers and companies build, measure, and scale better content marketing. It's really a no-code solution to building landing pages. Speaking as a marketer myself, Unstack has been a huge boon instead of like messing around with XHTML and going through different kind of middlemen to get just one simple copy update up to onto a website. Unstack is a really good tool just to circumvent all of that. And then obviously just a little bit more about Grapevine. At Grapevine, we combine influencer discovery and analytics with campaign execution and strategy to help solve the influencer marketing puzzle. So every step in the process of your influencer marketing campaign, from influencer discovery to negotiation to payment to publishing content, we can do that at Grapevine. So I already talked a little bit about myself. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure thing. My name's Chris. I run our customer success team here at Unstack. And a part of that is also largely in the education space for our customers. So we bring on, throughout this expert webinar series that Grant talked about, experts like Gibran to talk about different aspects that can really help you build out your business outside of Unstack and then linking it back into Unstack.
Cool. So let's get into the thick of it. Influencer marketing can be scary, right? 48% of marketers rate that measuring marketing ROI is their number one challenge, and then 45% say that driving conversions with marketing content is a challenge. And a lot of feedback that I get from other marketers in terms of influencer marketing is that it's really good for kind of top of the funnel things, but it doesn't necessarily drive the conversions that they're looking for. And the thing is, that's only the part of the puzzle. Influencer marketing can extend way beyond just your standard impressions and awareness. And so this is going to get at the heart of that and going to give you sort of, techniques and tips to actually build a full funnel influencer marketing campaign, or include influencer marketing content in every stage of your funnel, from awareness to consideration to conversion. So the first thing, how to get started on your B2B campaign, is start asking questions. At the core, your B2B product is a solution. And what are solutions in the B2B world? Pop quiz. A, solutions are trading Enes Kanter and a few picks for Davis Bertans on the Celtics. B, the answers to key business questions. So if you answered A, then let's chat offline. But if you answered B, then you are correct and sane. When building out your influencer marketing campaigns for your product, you're going to first want to pull a list of questions for your product. What are your fundamental questions you're looking to solve? And what are the pain points you're looking to solve for your consumer? A clearly phrased question is going to give you a head start on putting together a great influencer campaign brief. If you're a little bit stumped, one of my favorite free ways to do this without investing in tools like Ahrefs is to do the alphabet test on Google. It's as simple as opening up an incognito tab on your Chrome window and type in the category you're servicing and see what Google autocomplete tells you. So in my case, if it's an influencer, if I'm looking to build some great new influencer marketing content, I would go on Google and type in influencer marketing, and then I would type B, right? And that will autocomplete with like influencer marketing brief. And so that gives me a better idea what people are searching for and what kind of campaign and content that I should be looking to build. So once you've got your target list of customers, list of questions your target customers might be asking, it's time to put a campaign brief and search for influencers. So when you're writing a effective campaign brief, you first have to ask yourself, what, where, who, when, why. This is the kind of first impression your target influencer will have of your campaign. So make sure to be concise and precise. Ultimately, what a campaign brief is supposed to do, it is supposed to start a conversation with your target advocate or influencer. And so don't treat it as like your be all end all kind of ultimate source of what should be done in the campaign. Ultimately, the creator is the one that best knows how to activate their audiences. So make sure you're a little bit flexible on that end. Also, make sure to embrace SMART goals. So make sure your goals are specific, measurable, agreed upon. Again, talk to your influencer, make sure it's realistic, and also time-based. Typically, in my experience, influencers need about 4 to 6 weeks advance notice in order to build a great campaign. So make sure you are aware of your content calendar for the quarter, and make sure you start talking to influencers early to make sure you get content timed correctly with your marketing initiatives. The best creative briefs in the end provide a framework for outcomes. So again, it's not the kind of final be-all end-all document that you should be operating on. So once you got a creative brief, it's time to discover influencers. So you might be asking, should I be working with Instagram influencers or YouTube influencers? So for B2C influencers, Instagram is a really, really effective tool. But for B2B, I would typically recommend that you build a YouTube campaign. YouTube, make no mistake, is the second largest search engine in the world, and oftentimes people will be finding your B2B product based off of a Google search or reviews, a Google search that actually answers the question that they're trying to ask. So when you start your search for YouTube influencers, think carefully about how your ideal user would discover your content. So try to look for videos using kind of long tail keyword searches, like for example, like top 5 tools to drive traffic, or how to show my boss I'm doing my job correctly. And so when you use those keywords, as you can see in this mistake below, it's a B2C example, but it still applies. You can use keywords on YouTube to discover creators that build the type of creator of content that you're seeking. So when you're building your ultimate content, think about what is the ideal SEO title for that content. And so with YouTube influencer marketing, you're looking for answers, not influencers. And so when you look for the right answers, you're going to find influencers talking about those answers, and that will give you an idea of who to actually start negotiating with. And oftentimes, when you go to a creator's profile, if you go to their about page, once you fill out the CAPTCHA, they'll give you their contact email address. And another interesting thing that is helpful when searching for influencers on YouTube is to game the algorithm a little bit. Open up an incognito or create a burner account just for browsing your professional niche. This is advice that, I learned pretty quickly was, when trying to search for influencer marketing content, sometimes my search results would get clogged up with like random Game of Thrones or Star Wars content that was in my personal algorithm, but not necessarily the algorithm that I was interested for, my professional stuff. It's also worth doing, a YouTube search for your competitors. See if they've worked with any influencers and target creators that have a similar vibe or are in the same space. Or you could use a platform like Grapevine. So influencer marketing, searching for influencers on YouTube, although it's fun, it can take a lot of time. Influencer marketing platforms like Grapevine can take a lot of the guesswork out of looking for an influencer. And that is a quick personal plug over there. And so what do good B2B influencer videos look like? So from what I've seen, The most effective types of B2B videos are in the kind of following categories. So one is tutorials. You can work with an influencer to create a nicely produced tutorial or guide, and you can create a little creative with these too, and make sure these videos are titled properly. Good examples of titles could be, how to, solve your problem or question using your software, or how to generate your ideal KPI using your software, top 5 tips when using X software to solve, question, software tutorial, or how I'm using your software to, solve this problem, or how I impressed Pam from accounting using your B2B product. What I've also seen is like folks like Neil Patel. They're really good at creating titles like how this new product helped me convert more leads. Simple as that. So again, you get the gist. Try to think of how your target customer might find your product through a Google search. You'll also want to take extra note of how the influencer you're working with would integrate their product into their daily life. And so if you have a productivity app, you might leverage that influencer to talk about how they organize a group trip using your product. If your software integrates with other existing platforms, it might be worth to create videos that combine the title of those two products as well. So for example, HubSpot is pretty good at integrating with other tools. And so it's like how to integrate like your product with HubSpot, things like that. And it's like, you might be asking sort of, why can I just produce these videos in-house? I mean, you could, but that takes like a ton of time staring at tools like Adobe Premiere when you could be spending that time building your business instead. Influencers will help you deliver that great, authentic, trustworthy content that doesn't seem like a product, is trying to be sold. Another type of great video for B2B content is the hacking type videos. These videos are focused more on the entrepreneurial type of customer, who customers live and die by how their businesses perform on a single day. They're the bootstrappers and they need immediate solutions to either solve a problem immediately or to hack the system to get the results into a quicker place. So this is the type of video that you can connect with like a business guru or a tech guru type of influencer to create really personal content that could connect with those entrepreneurial customers. So some like great ideas for a type of format for content to do is how I use this product to store to grow my store to X customers in like 30 days, or 5 quick easy hacks to scale your conversions for your content, or if if I could build a t-shirt business in 3 days using this software, so can you. Or how I 10x'd my web traffic using your product. People want to see real world examples of how your product can be used for success, and lean on those examples. And then another good thing to do is, aside from simple reviews, is comparison videos, which can include reviews too. Comparison videos are a great way to get some easy visibility for your product. All you have to do is ask the creator that you're working with to compare and contrast your established market competitor with your service. Obviously, you might want to throw a little bit of money to make sure that it's stressed that your product is ultimately, better. You'll see a ton of this. Like, for example, over here, an example is like 3 remote work tools from home. It was a great video where they reviewed, a couple of different remote work tools. And so if you're seeing some of those videos being made, it's kind of like link building, except for except for video content, right? So make sure that you open up communication with an influencer and make sure that your product is top of mind. And then also what you want to do is you want to close the deal with a great offer. You want to add some, sugar on top. Do your best Don Corleone impression and make them an offer they simply can't refuse. I can't tell you how many times I've seen like a lowball offer that doesn't inspire me at all. Like, what are people going to do with a 1-week trial? It takes a couple of days simply to even get onboarded onto a product. And so what you want to create is you want to create a kind of existential feedback loop with your offer to make sure that a user has such a great time with your product that they can't live without it after the trial ends. And that will allow you to upsell your product from that, right? And so you may be taking temporary loss, but your ultimate goal is to become an existential asset to your customer. And also, if you have a great offer, influencers will be excited to share that on their channel. Again, influencers want to be able to provide value to their fans, and they want to be able to provide value to their audience. And so if you create a compelling offer, it's going to make negotiating rates with that influencer so much more simple, and they're also going to be more likely to work with you again.
Gibran, I would just say, I want to further emphasize this particular slide. I think this is something that a lot of people, they put all the work in to find the influencer. They put all the work in to negotiate. They have a great, piece of content that's getting produced for them. And then right at the very end, they kind of missed the boat by not putting a bow on top with a great offer. So I'm really glad you included this, because just anyone who goes and put these practices in place, make sure that you really package this and make this a part of your consideration, for your CAC, making sure that that great sort of offer is there with that influencer.
Absolutely. Thanks, Grant. And so now that you've, created an awesome video, you've created some awesome content with the influencer, what's next? Here's the thing that gets a lot of, marketers stuck. It's like, okay, I have this content and it's driving some traffic, but I don't know what else to do, right? How do I effectively take that content even further beyond? Shout out to my fellow Dragon Ball Z friends in here. So your campaign doesn't just end when you publish it. You have to be like Son Goku here. You have to go even further beyond. And to remain competitive, you have to kind of ascend to new levels here. So how can you do that ascension? Easy as repurposing your content. One piece of great influencer content can be many, many things. I'm sure that you've heard Gary Vaynerchuk absolutely scream about this before. I don't even know how that guy still has vocal cords, but you can take one piece of long form YouTube content and chop it up into an Instagram story. You can embed it into a blog post. You can include it in a white paper. You can create a list of testimonials. You can publish that video on Twitter. And you can even, license that content for, paid ads. What I've seen tons of brands do, and that we work with tons of brands to do, is chop up select pieces of YouTube influencer content and put paid ads behind that on YouTube ads, or take video content and repurpose that for Facebook ads. And when if you're working with Instagram influencers, you can, when you have that kind of paid partnership, you can easily boost that post to any kind of select audience. And so this will help you do better audience targeting based on your demographic. You can also do additional targeting based on what YouTube channels that you think your consumers are watching. And you can even retarget everyone that watched the initial video post. There's a lot of power in repurposing and retargeting your content to keep that going and to make sure that feedback loop continues.
And Gibran, one other thing I would say there too, especially for earlier stage companies, maybe you haven't established a brand yet in your market, or there are other bigger brands around you, using this third-party influencer content can kind of help you punch a little bit above your weight class in terms of having that third-party validation, getting that in front of people, kind of making you almost look a little bit bigger than you are. So it goes beyond just the direct response piece. There's a really nice positioning element to it as well.
Absolutely. And I'll be going a little bit further into that when I talk about kind of metrics for success. So how can you tell if your your campaigns are successful. And it really depends on what you're looking for. There's the CPL model, where if you're a B2B brand, you're obviously looking to, buff up that email list to target customers and drip campaigns. And so is your influencer marketing, effective at driving signups for your website? Are they effective about getting more people interested in your offer? And so I'm going to get some heat for this, but I think cost per click, to Grant's point, can be pretty valuable if you're scheming to build some great remarketing campaigns. For what you paid for your creators, they are going to be more efficient at driving, awareness for your brand with that third-party validation than content that you produce in-house. So from there, it's up to you to kind of look at Google Analytics and see where those customers are going to your website and how you can retarget them with YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. And then finally, there's, cost per action. So unless, CPA is kind of like the gold standard, a lot of people think, but unless the content is kind of mind-blowingly incredible, I don't necessarily think CPA can be the right metric for an influencer marketing campaign. CPA will often happen in that retargeting part. So unless you're like a master copywriter and editor and that you've absolutely 100% nailed your targeting, no one is necessarily going to pull out their wallet as soon as they see your video to purchase your product or service. Focus on that kind of top of the funnel and make sure you embed that influencer content all along your influence, all along the customer journey, to make sure that people know that your brand is authentic, your brand is legitimate, and that it is actually helpful to solve those business practices. Another thing that's really, really helpful to, driving those conversions from your influencer content is, a great landing page. You'll need a kind of swanky landing page to better track all the good clicks and to drive the actions you want. Tools like Unstack are great to easily build landing pages that convert. It's also really, really easy to edit. And you can do multiple kind of A/B tests to really see what people are reacting to. And then also make sure to configure the backend properly. This is a mistake that, I've made in the past that I'm lucky that, Grant was there when we worked at Grapevine together to kind of train me on this. But make sure to also configure that backend. Google Tag Manager is a great tool to use to track every step of the funnel. As you can see here, just the other day, I made something to track outbound clicks onto a campaign that we were running, and that also allowed us to track exactly what websites those people were clicking on. So it's been really, really effective. And so, can influencer marketing work for you? Of course. I know all of the above could have sounded a bit, daunting, but it's easier than it sounds. You don't even have to do it alone. If you send me an email at jabran@grapevinelogic.com after this webinar, I can get you a free month trial of our influencer marketing platform along with a consultation to find out if the channel is right for you. And so that is it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So, Jabran, this was awesome. I think this is a really great primer. And maybe if we want to keep a couple slides up, I think one that would be interesting is the maybe the metrics slide, and then also the different sort of content types, because I think those are the two areas that people probably think about the most. Everybody on the webinar, if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. I have plenty of questions, so even if we don't have a ton coming through, I have some questions for you, Jabran, that we could go through. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I want to hit you with the first one, which is, when we talk about the types of influencers, we talked about kind of maybe how to source some of them, right? Like, let me query, content, about my product, about my competitor's product, and so on. You get a huge range of talent that's created content most often. How do I and for everyone on this call, how do we figure out what we should pay for an influencer, or what size is the right size? Because I've seen, people who are in the millions of views per video, and I assume that they're very, very expensive. And then there's obviously people who are really small and maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze to work with them. So can you give everyone some guidance on like where they would start or what you recommend?
Yeah, I think what I'd recommend is so I'd recommend what's called the kind of like micro influencer, right? And so these are people with about like, maybe like 10,000 to like 50,000 subscribers. There's a correlation between, size of influencer and, the conversions that they can drive. These kind of more niche influencers can reach a more niche crowd who are more likely to take action. And since they're just starting out, they are more likely to have cheaper rates for their videos, and B, be easier to license for retargeting content, because they just want to be able to just get their content out there, right? And so for these micro influencers, you can expect to shell out anywhere from $100, a couple $100 to like a cool 1,000.
Okay, awesome. And so the idea there is you're getting a good deal, you're getting some organic distribution, but the real value is in the content and the repurposing of it.
That is correct. Yeah. And if you can create an awesome kind of SEO title, that's going to help you on your Google search as well.
That's helpful. And Paul Buenapane asked a question. So I'm assuming AOV is average order value, but how does average order value for the influencer channel compare to other channels for B2B that you've worked with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so that's kind of like working with e-commerce, correct? That's what I'm going to assume. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the kind of campaign. From B2C campaigns on YouTube, I see, compared to other channels, like pretty great conversion. For B2B, again, I would stress that it all comes in the kind of retargeting and remarketing aspect of it. So it's kind of like, I would describe a lot of B2B campaigns as kind of like almost like a loss leader kind of thing initially. However, once you start getting more traffic onto that, it becomes the long tail value of that will recoup those losses.
Got it. And Tony O'Berry asked a question, which said, how important is brand alignment when you're vetting these influencers? Like, so I want to unpack that a little more too. How do you also ensure, even if they seem great on paper, that, that content they produce stays on brand, or even, maybe what happens if they go off brand? Like, how do you course correct that? So maybe you could talk a little bit to like brand alignment.
Yeah.
And sort of managing those expectations with influencers.
Yeah, absolutely. So when researching influencers, it's really important to kind of get a feel for their vibe on their channel. And so look at their other videos and see what other paid partnerships they have done, and to see if they've kind of stayed on that brand. Influencers, at the end, they're business people, right? And so they're not going to do anything necessarily to jeopardize the relationships that they have with brands. And so staying on brand is a thing that influencers are pretty disciplined at doing. What's also great about using platforms like Grapevine is that it also curates influencers by how well they were received by their brand partners. And so it's kind of like an Uber kind of thing. Those brands can give influencers, a certain amount of stars, up to 5 stars, and leave comments. And so that will give you a better idea too of whether or not that influencer was satisfied to that brand, and whether they stayed, they stayed on brand. In terms of like staying entirely on brand, I don't think you can necessarily expect an influencer to necessarily be that kind of 100% one-to-one ambassador. At the end of the day, they have to, the part of having a authentic and organic testimonial is that you allow them to be themselves a little bit. So you're going to have to take a little bit of risk in order to reap an awesome reward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that we covered last week or in our previous webinar on Facebook ads was around creative fatigue. So the idea that you have to constantly be creating new assets and new content to keep in front of your audience because they kind of go stale after a while.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, and I know the Grapevine platform does this really well, but as you start to like book multiple influencers, like, do you have any tips on, you know, how to manage it, what metrics to be like looking at, you know, whether something was good or not good, and kind of like how to build, you know, one of the things we talk about a lot at Unstack is don't build a piece of content, build a machine to create lots of content. And I think that's super important for all businesses, not just B2B. So using that kind of line of thinking, you know, any tips you might give to folks about like using either Grapevine or just approaching the influencer channel in more like a systemized way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So when looking at, you know, if you're booking, you know, multiple influencers, I think one of the best metrics to take a look at in terms of knowing whether or not your content was a success or not is one, just the engagement on that content. Are people talking about your product? Or are they talking about the influencer in the comment section, right? Is it getting a lot of likes? And also, is it driving clicks to your website? Because you want to be able to get clicks to your landing page in order to retarget them. And that will also give you a better idea of the kind of long tail value. Again, is thinking about it from a how, generating traffic on Google. When someone makes a search and when someone finds a video and when someone clicks through that video, that will tell Google to, you know, rank that video, you know, higher on that search. And so you're going to be able to understand that if you see a piece of content that is driving a lot of clicks to your landing page, there's that kind of user intent that is going to allow you to understand, I should probably work with this influencer again or similar influencers, and also let you better understand that there's actually going to be a lot of long tail value on that video. Like I did a search for one of our old clients, the other day, and their campaign videos that they posted in 2017 is still driving clicks to their page today.
Yes, you really get that evergreen kind of ongoing drip. These are like, they'll kind of become like a little annuity for you in terms of traffic.
Right. And then I see another question from Paul over here. He asks, if we ID an influencer a competitor has worked with in the past, are they more or less likely to work with us since they already have a quote unquote partner for a category? And is there a risk of the influencer sharing details of us / our offer with the competitor? So to answer the first part, so they are probably less likely to work with you if there are already a partner, but that shouldn't stop you from, you know, asking, and that also should help you, you know, find influencers that are similar to that. So when doing that kind of hacking the algorithm kind of approach, when you click on that user's content, YouTube will more or less likely suggest a video that's kind of similar with a different influencer. So that will probably help you find influencers that are similar, have the same kind of engagement, but also not currently partnered with everyone. But if they've already done a one-off kind of thing, that is totally fine. And then to ask her the second part, also, is there a risk of influencer sharing the details of us / our offer with the competitor? That's a pretty interesting question. I haven't run into that when working with influencers. If that partner has like a super close relationship with that competitor, then maybe. I guess the solution to that would just to be, when talking to an influencer, just to be use that as negotiation, as just a conversation. An influencer, again, is a savvy business person, so they're going to want to be able to continue to be able to do good business with, you know, a broad variety of partners without, you know, risk of necessarily alienating everyone.
Yeah, I think most of the time influencers are pretty independent, right? And so that works to their advantage because they want to be viewed as objective. If they're talking about products, you know, even if it's sponsored, the audience wants to have this person shooting me straight, right? Like they're telling me the truth. And so I found at least that I think most of the time influencers are pretty objective, and they also are pretty relationship oriented. There are some exceptions, but you can usually kind of get a feel for that just in the early conversation with them.
Yeah.
Tony just even asked, are there confidentiality agreements? You know, that's something that some brands will do. I think especially as you're working with larger influencers, that becomes more of the norm. I think Grapevine has some like tooling to even manage that. But like with a micro influencer, you know, would they sign an NDA? Maybe, maybe not. But generally, and Gibran, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I mean, I think most of the time, sort of, I'd say more like in like a pre-launch scenario, or like, you know, a product's going live and you kind of want to keep it under wraps, kind of like have a gag on it until a certain date. Like, say that's more of like a appropriate time to go for some of that stuff. You know, most of the information these influencers are going to get is publicly available, you know, on your website or in content or on review sites like G2 Crowd. So I think it's just kind of a judgment call. You have to figure out what makes sense for your business.
Right. And again, if it's a product launch, you know, with that, you know, 4 to 6 weeks, you know, advance notice, you know, more likely than not, that influencer is going to go live with content, you know, around the same time that you go live with your product launch.
I see one other question in here about when running B2B campaigns, do you have best practices for using landing pages to capture leads? Jerron, I want to get your take on this, but one thing I would say is, especially if you're working with a number of different influencers, either using specific tracking links for each one that you can go back in your analytics and sort of look at, you know, who's driving what, being sure that you break that out is really important. But I think also there's an opportunity to just create dedicated post-click experiences for each of those influencers that you work with. So if you're just using a tracking link, that's going to help you understand, like, did someone buy? Did they convert to a lead, right? For example, and that's valuable information. You can double down on the influencers that are really moving, you know, the right metrics for you. But in terms of actually maximizing the conversions, you may want to think about creating dedicated, we call them post-click experiences, but dedicated pages or content that the user goes to for that particular influencer. And so rather than having, like, you know, everybody go to the homepage, you know, maybe if you're working with a particular influencer, you know, you can sort of say, you can kind of welcome them from that video to that page. Maybe you have that influencer content again on that page, and you really tailor it for the user. That's an opportunity, obviously, from a tracking perspective, very easy to do, but then you're going to also drive people further into your funnel and hopefully be able to convert a higher percentage of those viewers. So that's sort of my 2 cents on best practices there. Jabron, I don't know what other things you guys have seen as you built campaigns.
Yeah. So, you know, first of all, I took the words right from my mouth in terms of building custom influencer content that an influencer will be excited to share on their own channels, but also to make sure that make sure on that landing page there's that, you know, you even put it, you know, front of center, that clear call to action, you know, to sign up for your offer, to take advantage of that offer. You know, there are a couple different you know, formats you can do. You can do you know, like a contest format. You can do like an exclusive email list format. But again, making people, you know, I think, you know, one thing in terms of trying to answer the immediate question that users are trying to solve, but to also make sure that they feel like that they're being offered an exclusive benefit. So when building out that landing page, just make sure to really ramp up on, you know, the exclusivity of, you know, joining a list or signing up for a service or product via that influencer.
Oh, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. So I think that's most of or all of the questions that we had. If anybody has any last questions, go ahead and throw them in. We'll hang out for maybe another minute or two. Just wanted to say, Gibran and to the Grapevine team, thanks so much for coming on and hosting this. It was awesome just to kind of, you know, even for me, just get a refresher on what's happening in the influencer space. I really like what you talked about around using the content as sort of a feeder into those other channels like remarketing and recycling that content, using it across all of the different sort of marketing channels. That was a big takeaway for me. So just want to say thanks again. And also thanks to everybody for taking the 45 minutes or so to spend that time with us. Hopefully this was valuable to you. If you got value out of this, go back and check out our first 2 expert webinars. Again, first one was on brand differentiation, brand positioning, and messaging. Second one was on getting started with Facebook ads. So this is actually a really great time where you can take the learnings from those first 2 webinars, combine them with what Gibran talked about today, and really start building some pretty powerful campaigns to drive activity for your business. Gibran, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, again, thank you so much for spending time listening to me and also indulging me in my random Star Wars and Dragon Ball Z references. Really appreciate it. And also, if you want to talk about influencer marketing, my inbox is open, or send me a DM on LinkedIn. If you're a B2C marketer and you want to learn more about B2C influencer marketing, I'm also happy to chat with you as well. If hopefully I see you guys all on the platform. If not, I hope you take these tips and build awesome campaigns and work with some awesome creators. And another interesting tip is that because of these uncertain times in COVID, you're probably also going to find that influencer rates will be a little bit cheaper than they are normally.
And you guys have a resource document around coronavirus and kind of how to be mindful of that and work with influencers, right?
Yes, we do. I'll link it to you so that you can send it in a follow-up email to everybody that attended.
All right. Well, until next time, everybody, thanks for joining. And we will follow up with the recording of this webinar and some more resources for you to get started.